The Shortcut by Invader John. My family and I had recently moved from California to Alabama. The transition has been exciting, to say the least. Finding new jobs, getting the kids into school, learning all the roads of this new town. Driving to some of the most basic locations feels like an adventure being in this new area. Being born and raised in California and parting ways after 35 years, Alabama feels like an entirely different country. Finding a job wasn't too difficult. I stuck to the field I had worked in California and took a quality control position at a roofing manufacturer. It took me about 35 to 40 minutes to get to work, depending on the traffic. That may not seem like a very long commute to some, but since I only lived about 10 minutes away from my previous job, I wasn't entirely fond of the idea of spending an hour and 20 minutes in the car every day. When I found the shortcut through a local wooded area, I was ecstatic. It ended up shaving off about 10 minutes of my drive, both to and from work. Gotta love technology and what you can find just looking at a satellite image on Google Maps. I'd been training at my new job for about the past 3 months, working the morning shift from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., knowing the entire time I'd eventually move to second shift, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. I wasn't entirely keen on the idea of working those hours and coming home that late, but I already got along with that crew working those hours. Hopefully that'll help smooth the transition. Driving to and from work every day, I'd always take the same uneventful route. The shortcut marked the halfway point between work and my house. If I was ever annoyed about the drive, I'd remind myself how much longer the commute could take if I hadn't found this path. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one that drives down this dirt road. I've yet to see another vehicle on it. It's Monday afternoon, the first day I'll be working my new shift schedule. It's been pretty dreary all morning, raining off and on, and I was exhausted. Didn't sleep much. It's not easy changing up your sleep schedule. I stopped at the gas station as I do every Monday, filled up my truck and grabbed myself an energy drink. Figured it would be a long night and that I'd need it. This shift's going to take some time getting used to it. A little bit of liquid crack ought to get me through. The evening shift was just like working first shift. It was pretty normal and uneventful, but nice to be able to listen to some music since we didn't have any management breathing down our necks. We finished up for the night, greeted the night shift, and headed home. I enjoyed driving at this time of night. Most of the stores around town closed at 11, so there was hardly any cars on the road. I must have had a stint of highway hypnosis on my way home. It felt like I had just started driving, and already I was at the point to make my turn into the woods and onto the shortcut. I never gave much thought to the shortcut for the past 3 months. Besides the fact that it saved me some time, it had just become a part of my daily routine. It was the first time I took the narrow path home at night. Seeing it at night, there was something different about it, almost lifelike. I felt a chill run down my spine. I hadn't thought about how creepy it might appear at night. All of the overgrown trees and bushes blocked out most of the already bleak moonlight. It had been overcast all day. The path was extremely narrow, only enough room for one vehicle. The bushes on either side often tapped against the driver and passenger side mirrors. I started to feel uneasy, claustrophobic. After a few minutes, I thought to myself, how long had I been on this road? It usually only takes a couple minutes to cut through this forest. Why does it feel like it's been longer? It takes me approximately 10 to 15 minutes to get to the shortcut, depending on traffic, and there wasn't any traffic tonight. I looked at the clock on the radio, 11:18. That can't be right, I thought. As all the thoughts were tumbling through my mind, I came to a large clearing and slowed to a stop. I've never seen this. Did I turn on the right road? I've been taking it for the past 3 months. My thoughts shattered by a sound. Crying. A baby. Crying. I froze, cracked my window slightly and listened. There it is again. This time louder. How could there possibly be an infant out here in the middle of the woods? I was concerned and terrified at the same time. It seemed to have been about 20 yards away from the passenger side of the truck, just inside the tree line. And it was getting closer. I reached for my flashlight in my driver's side door, shining it at my passenger side window, doing nothing except blinding myself temporarily with the reflection. I immediately turned it off, cursing at my own stupidity. I rolled the window down a little more, slid across the bench seat to the passenger side, and pointed the flashlight out the window. I panned back and forth with the light, scanning the tree line for the source of the sounds. Nothing. I turned off my light and waited. After a few moments, I slowly slid back to the driver's side, trying to make as little noise as possible, straining my ears, listening with bated breath. I sat motionless. I was about to put my truck into drive when I heard a loud thud. I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, and more crying coming from the same direction. I threw the truck into drive and took off down the dirt path. I changed my mind. I no longer wanted to stick around and find out what was making that noise. Not a minute later, the yellow light on the dash caught my eye. My gas light. There's no way. I just got gas before work. It had to be a fault with a fuse, a sensor, something. My fuel gauge is on empty. My gas light is on. How is that possible? I continued on, frantic to see the end of this dirt path. Suddenly, the engine sputtered a few times, then died. The gauge had been correct. I rolled to a stop in a clearing, slightly smaller than the last one, and caught the strong aroma of gas. How was that possible? Was there a hole in my tank? I don't think I hit anything. I've been this way almost 100 times. The next thought shook me to the core. When I caught a glimpse of whatever that was it coming from underneath the truck? I started to panic, my eyes darting back and forth. I focused ahead and turned on my high beams. No end in sight. I reached for my cell phone. I had to get a hold of my wife. There was no way in hell I was going to walk. Not with whatever is out there. It's not ringing. I have service, but it's not ringing. I tried a dozen or so more times. I restarted my phone in hopes that that might fix it. Still nothing. Then I heard it again. The crying. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I looked around frantic, and there it was, the source of the cries. Down on all fours, I could barely make it out in the dismal light that barely escaped the canopy above. It was a massive, hulking beast. I see it, and it sees me. The noise it let out next was almost indescribable. It began as a cry, and then turned into a deep, guttural roar. I scrambled for the handgun under my seat, trying not to take my eyes off the beast, as it tore off into the tree line and out of my sight. I held my gun tightly in my right hand and my flashlight in my left and waited. I certainly couldn't sit here all night. What the hell was that thing? I tried to listen for more movement, or to see if I could hear that thing cry again. Nothing but my rapid heartbeat. I had to get out of here, but how? It felt impossible to think. My thoughts clouded and disturbed by what I had seen. I had no idea where that creature was, but it knows where I am. I need to draw it out. I disabled my dome light and as quick as possible, unlocked my door, opened it, slammed it, and then locked it again. As soon as the door slammed, I heard something scrambling through the tree lines and bushes on the left side of my truck. A shrill, excited wail rang out and something slammed in my driver door. I could see the top of its head out of my driver's window. Then, it stood up. It had sunken, red, lifeless eyes and foaming drool dripping from what appeared to be tusks like a wild boar. Its skin, deep blood red and meaty. There was no epidermal layers, just exposed muscle and tendons. I screamed and slid frantically across the bench seat to the passenger side as it reared back and slammed its face into the glass, shattering it, sending bits of glass into my face, slicing just below my right eye. I fired a panicked shot and it let out a deafening shriek. I couldn't tell where I shot it, but I know I wounded it. Now was my chance. It was now or never. I wasn't going to let this thing cart me off into these godforsaken woods. I fumbled for a lock on the passenger door and swung it open. I bolted. I never ran so fast before in my life or been more terrified. I headed back down the path from the direction that I had came, in hopes of getting back to the road I had turned in on because the direction forward seemed never ending. There was something odd about this path. There's no way it was my usual route. I had to get back to the road and away from whatever the hell that nightmare was I disturbed. I could feel the warm blood running down my cheek. I attempted to wipe it with my overshirt clumsily, gun in one hand, flashlight in the other. A thunderous, piercing roar rang out from behind me, and the sound of its claws ripping up the dirt path as it attempted to gain traction and pursue its prey. Me. And I could hear the excitement as it whimpered wildly like a rabid dog. I struggled to rip off my overshirt and toss it into the air in hopes that it would distract it. I didn't dare stop running, even for a moment. I glanced back and saw the beast skid to a halt just as my shirt landed in front of him, grabbing it in his jaws and ripping it up effortlessly into shreds. It had bought me a little bit more time. I turned off the flashlight in hopes that the beast would lose sight of me and continued running. I couldn't hear it pursuing, but I continued. I'd been running for what felt like forever, when I could finally just make out the paved road that I'd come from. Just as I had started to feel some shred of relief, there it was. The creature, standing upright on its hind legs. It had to be at least 7 feet tall, and it was standing in the middle of the path between me and the road. Arms outstretched, ready to attack. All I could think about was getting back to my wife and kids, and my body went into fight or flight. I continued sprinting straight at it. As it squatted down, getting ready to pounce, I aimed my gun and started unloading round after round at it, until the entire magazine was empty. I could hear squelching thuds as the bullets met their mark. The beast shrieked in pain and fled into the trees. I continued sprinting forward towards the road, towards the hope of seeing my family again. As my shoes hit the hard pavement, I didn't stop. I ran out into the middle of the road. Luckily, the car that was driving by saw me, otherwise I'd probably been run over. They laid on the horn and pulled up alongside me. "John?" the driver shouted. "What the hell are you doing out here?" It was our neighbor Daryl. I told him I needed a ride and ran around to the passenger side. I was about to explain what had happened, but before I could say a word, he put his index finger to his lips and pointed towards the back seat. I turned around to see his daughter, passed out in her car seat. He quietly explained how she had been teething and they're having a hard time getting her to sleep, so he was driving her around to see if that would do the trick. I nodded and thanked him quietly and told him I'd explain what happened later, and that I just wanted to get home. He smiled and nodded back. I looked back towards the dirt road. No sign of the beast. Studying the area, I knew that was the way I usually take. As he pulled up into my driveway, I thanked him again and proceeded to head inside. I expected to see my wife up and waiting for me on the porch, wondering where I'd been. She must have fallen asleep. I got inside the house. It was quiet. I made my way to the bedroom. To my surprise, the light was on, but my wife wasn't in bed. I looked around the room and proceeded to call out for her. Something on my pillow caught my eye. It was a note. "John, got worried you're not home yet. Tried your phone several times, but it wouldn't ring. Went to find you. Don't like the idea of driving through the woods at night, but I'm going to check the shortcut."